Okay. Hello, everybody. It's me, Maurice Brown. Great to be here with you. We've got a special guest on the show today. Special privilege to have this special comedian who's worked with everyone from Jay Leno, Jim Carrey, Jerry Lewis, even. She's been featured on The Tonight Show 29 times, Comedy Central, ABC, and many more. She hosted her own show on Mom TV and is a popular host on red carpets, including backstage at the Emmy Awards and many Hollywood premieres. Her latest book came out with the hit movie Mom's Night Out, starring Sean Astin. She's appeared on just about every major network and was a featured act at LA's hottest comedy clubs and a Christian comedian at that, which is really special. Um, Speaks about 40 weeks a year on Christian platforms as a comedian evangelist, passionate about her faith, and has appeared on CNN as a Christian in Hollywood and TBN, CBN Hour of Power. Ladies and gentlemen, and now she's on the Maurice Brown Comedy Hour. It didn't get any better than that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Miss Carrie Pomerale.
Hi, Maurice. Good morning.
Good morning, Carrie. I tell you, I really appreciate you being on the show. This is an honor for me,
Oh, you're so
being
sweet.
a Christian man myself and entertainer and performer. I've been doing comedy for 7 years. 56, getting late in the game, but hey,
No, man, all
it is
good.
what it is. But I mean, being a Christian in this world is quite a challenge because I do a lot of comedy in clubs where they're not clean, and you have to go up there and and figure out how to make them laugh. But you are an artist that I've seen a lot of your performances, and so what have you been doing, Carrie? Now that we've got the COVID-19, we can't do anything. Everybody's like a prisoner in their own home. So what are you doing to keep yourself busy and entertain, or should I say, in the world of entertainment?
I think that we all just need attention, Maurice. Like, if anybody gives me a wink at the grocery store, they're going to get 10 minutes of my stand-up comedy, in the line. But it's really, this is the longest break I've ever had in 14 years. I mean, even after I had a baby, I was like touring, like breastfeeding on stage, like back at it, and so I've been doing virtual shows. That seems to be the thing right now, which is
Yeah.
how weird is that to do comedy for complete silence? So I'm just doing these virtual shows because it's helping bring laughter to people. I've been doing fundraisers for first responders.
Yeah.
And so I do comedy, and I do sketch. I have my kids and I involve them, but it's so weird to do comedy and you just see people like nodding at you. You can't hear anything. It's totally silent. So I think once we get audiences again, I'm going to be jumping up and down, just thrilled, so excited.
What do you think about doing comedy on the virtual platform? I did it like last week for the first time because I did it immediately after this thing was shut down in March on a streaming platform where you video record it, submit
Yeah,
it, and on a
right.
designated date they run the show. I hated that. Never did that again. And so now I'm doing the virtual Zoom, and it was better. I can say that it was better because I could see faces on the laptop, and the laughs were kind of delayed 3 to 4 seconds. So trying to get into a rhythm on that was kind of a challenge, but
Uh,
I did
yeah.
kind of like it.
I've never done any where I could hear the laughs. And I come from an acting background. I started, acting in film and TV, and I've been an actor my whole life. So when I do comedy now in this platform, I just sort of have an out of body experience. I know how to do it. I've been doing this 14 years. I know my timing. I'd rather do a pre-recorded show. I don't want technical difficulties. And yeah, they're not going to laugh. I've done shows where they write in comments, and I have my friend like as a moderator, and we'll do a little back and forth. But I think it's just you put on your game face and you do it. I've got a couple coming up where they want
Now,
45 minutes pre-recorded, but that's because I have an acting background. It's almost like an act, like it's story time with Carrie, and I know how to do it. It's not the most fun, but I know that people are laughing and I'm bringing them joy. And You know, I can't wait till the clubs open up. I still want to do, I did never ever think that you should stop doing clubs if you want
Yeah.
my opinion, because that's where it makes you funny. That's where it makes you sharp. You can't trust church people to tell you if you're funny because they have to be nice to you no matter what. So,
Right.
you know, they're going to laugh whether they're like, oh, she's precious. But, you know, you go to a club and you're comic number 37 at 11:45 at night, you got to prove yourself. And that's a great rush. I'll never stop doing that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you're right about that. I mean, going on late and getting bumped and all that stuff. Yeah, you got to prove yourself. But so you were not able to see the faces when you were performing, huh? Wow. Do you know how many? What's the average number of people that you've been performing for?
I've had one that was like 5,000 because it had 5,000 views. And then I've had one that are a few hundred. And it's like usually they'll hire me because they want to raise money and then we promote it. And then we'll leave it up for a day or so, you know? So like
Yeah.
maybe we start off with 400 people watching or 500 people. I always tell my friends to come in and put comments. So when I'm done, I can read the comments. I'm like, just say something like, oh, she's funny or whatever. But, you know, so, and I've been doing ministry events virtually, which is, you know, as well. I do a
Yeah.
combo of that sometimes. I pray for people virtually, like literally. It's been crazy. It's been really amazing. So I have my first job in August, which is an outdoor, like small thing for like 20 people in Idaho. And I
Okay.
haven't been on a plane since March. And I'm like, yeah, like let me out of the house. I've got 2 kids. I just want to go work. So I'm hoping that it changes, Maurice. I mean, we don't know what it looks like, but that's my prayer.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So you're going for like maybe 30 to 45 minutes and you don't see anybody. So you're just like doing your comedy and you're hoping that it's wow, that oh
Well,
my gosh, that's
my
interesting.
ex-husband is a comedian and we're quarantined together, which is a sitcom, and he films me. And sometimes he'll like smile or laugh or whatever, and he just kind of gives me a little thumbs up. But yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal, but I just do it. I just do it.
No, you're on a whole other level. I mean, I'm doing open mics on Zoom, and so I can see like 20 to 30 people. I can see their faces, and then it kind
Right.
of like, it filters out. Okay, I'll see a group, and then another group, and then another group. It's never everybody at the same time, but at least I can see their faces and I can hear them laughing. So that's good. That's comforting to know that okay, it's working. Jokes are working, so that's comforting. But it's still not like a live crowd. It's still not the same thing at all. So it's a really difficult thing. Do you have any idea, predictions about how long this may last, Carrie?
I don't. I mean, I have dates on the calendar for the fall, and they keep getting
Yeah.
moved back. But I'm just praying. I'm just like, Lord, it's been supernatural how I've watched him provide. I'm a single mom, you know, so it's like a crazy time. And I just bought a house, literally just bought a house February 29th. And then this happened. So it's, you know, throw your hands up in the air. Because, you know, when you buy a house in Los Angeles, it's like you have to pay with your blood and a kidney, you know. And so I've never experienced anything like this. I just pray. I'm like, Lord, I don't know what it's going to look like, but you know, he knows. I've prayed about in certain times in my career, if it's not going as well as I want it to, you know, should I be doing a side hustle? Is there something else you want me to be doing? And nothing ever pops up. I figure that we comedians don't have a lot of job skills. Like I don't know what I would do, you know, if I wasn't doing this. So I hope this comes back. But I am a writer, so I write. I can write from home. So that's, you know, I've been working with the Hallmark Channel for the past couple of years with
Okay.
my writing partner. And so if that's what happens for a little while, but I really want to get back on the road. Like I really do.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Carrie Pomerali. In case you're wondering, I've seen her before. It's Carrie Pomerali. You've seen her on the Tonight Show. You've seen her on Comedy Central, ABC. She's been in films, TV, movie, whole thing. So, and she's graced the Maurice Brown Comedy Hour. I want to talk to you about Second City.
Yeah.
I love I loved Second City back in the day growing up in high school. I used to go to bed late at night because I was up watching SCTV out of Canada.
Yes, I
And
love SCTV. Eugene Levy and Martin Short, and
yeah, have
the
you ever
best.
met those guys?
I've met not those two, but like Robin Williams has been at the like when you're in LA, you could just I was sitting at a table waiting at Second City,
Yeah,
and Robin Williams is just like in right next to me, like in the back of the room. He would pop in
yeah,
uh to kind of just watch, not be the star or what have you. Or then there were kids that I went to school with that have made it. Like Simon Helberg was in my class, and he ended up on The Big Bang Theory, and I mean, there, or Derek Waters, he created Drunk History and stuff like that. But
yeah,
you just never know because the Second City in LA is connected to the Hollywood Improv, and the
yeah,
Hollywood Improv, like Chris Rock could walk in or Adam Sandler, like at any moment, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, at Second City, and then you had, I mean, way back in the day. I don't. What year were you at Second City?
Oh, I wasn't until the 2000s. I think it was the early
Okay,
2000s.
so I'm guessing you and I are relatively around about the same age. I used to watch Saturday Night Live when Bill Murray and Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd and Garrett Morris and Jane Curtin and all. I just loved that stuff. And
So my
I
generation
real
of SNL was Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks. Like that's who I grew up. I watched all the other. I mean, but then we had the privilege, tapes. We would get like the Eddie Murphy videotapes and watch like the best of Eddie Murphy or the best of
yeah.
Gilda Radner. But I read a lot of books. I just read Martin Short's biography, and it's just like I think it's amazing to hear the stories behind the scenes, like even Carol Burnett and the people that really paved the way for us to do what we do. And
Yeah.
just what a wild ride they were all on.
I thought it was awesome, Carrie, that you made the decision to leave Second City in Chicago.
It was in LA.
Basically,
I was in the LA company.
got it. And so you made the decision to leave based on the fact that your faith was being challenged to a
Like
point
it
where
was
you were like, you know what?
always being challenged. It just got to
Yeah,
the point where I can't be like it was always being not by my castmates that they had a problem with it, but it was just so hard. And everybody was high except me. It was like just crazy. And one time I took my Second City cast to my church one night to
yeah,
do improv,
yeah,
and they loved it. They loved it. These kids were just jumping up and down, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I've never had so much fun." And then I found out that they were all high. I had no idea. I was so naive. But then they wanted to start doing skits like Jesus in space and like really sacrilegious stuff. And
yeah.
that's when I felt like, okay, God, where do we go from here? Because my time is up. It had been 3 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you have challenges like that in entertainment when you were a faith-based performer, no question about it. I think that a lot of those guys back in the day, and so I'm probably like a good 10 years older than you, but I remember Bill Murray and those guys. They were really John Belushi. They were completely out of control.
Oh, they were
And
they were
so
blasted.
what's that?
Now, do you have an entertainment background before stand-up? What's your background?
Well, as a radio announcer back in the 90s, I used to do play by play for football, basketball, baseball, high school, and college. And I did it for 6, 7 years. And then I did a little stand up on the side because my manager thought I was pretty funny. And he said, "Man, you got to try stand up." I did. And I just kind of had a taste of it, but I didn't really pursue it until, later on down the road. Made a lot of, I was only in my 20s too. I didn't realize the opportunities that were before me, young and dumb. And I let a lot of time go by before I really started to start focusing on theater and radio and acting and so forth. But
Maurice, I quit stand-up twice before I ever started a career. I took a stand-up class. Well, it was funny. In high school, there was this drama class, and we had to do stand-up comedy. And I
okay.
literally told the teacher, Mr. Kindy, I said, "You're going to have to fail me because I will not do this assignment. Like, I'm mortified. So you're going to have to fail me." And he goes, "Can you go and tell one joke just so I don't have to give you an F?" So I did like one joke. And then I took a class in LA, and they
Yeah.
said, "Come back with jokes." And I quit. I just totally quit. And it was so funny because 10 years later, my high school invites me back. You know, it was like this big honor. And Mr. Kindy's interviewing me, and he goes, I don't remember you being particularly funny in my class. And I was like, I know, it's just timing, right? It's just timing.
Yeah, it is. Bottom line, it is timing. You don't know. You're young, like I said, and you just don't know what's going on. And I just thank God that He's been patient with me, because it's a lot of things you miss when you're young. You know, you miss a lot of things.
But then you also feel like God's timing is perfect. He can do anything at any time. So, you know, He's not on our schedule at all. I remember one time I started comedy. I thought I was old. I was like 29, you know, and this producer guy was helping me.
Yeah.
And I think in Hollywood, you just lie. Like everyone lies. Like when I was 22, they thought I was 16. And it was just this weird thing. And so he thought I was 25 or whatever. And I had this crisis in front of the Taco Bell on La Brea. I'm like, Mike, I got a confession. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm 29. He's like, yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was lying to you about my age. He's like, I don't care. It's comedy. Like he didn't care. You know what I mean? Like comedy, you can work forever. It's kind of ageless.
Yes, that's true. And you know, when you were at Second City, Carrie, you were doing sketch comedy.
Yeah.
And of course, with your decision to leave, you got into stand-up. How long did it take you to develop into a pretty good comedian?
I was so fast, Maurice. It was like a lightning thing. It was like I was praying one day about like, how do I make, because I was doing film auditions and they were inappropriate. My agent was like, well, you should probably do this movie. It's got a nude scene, but Charlie Sheen's in it. You know, he's awesome. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And so that was like in the, you know, before his blow up. And I started comedy classes. And then a month later, I was on stage at the Hollywood Improv. I mean, it was so fast. And then 3-4 months later, I was on stage with Sherry Shepherd. And I don't know if you know Bone Hampton. And
yeah, I know,
do you know
Bone.
comedian Bone? So Bone will tell you, he will tell you that he adopted me. He will tell you that I'm his comedy creation, but he took me under his wing. Sherry did too. And I started touring, and it was like this. It was just fast. And they would take me to these shows, you know, Bone and Sherry, and they would just throw me on stage. And sometimes it would be an all black audience, and I'm the only, you know, white girl, and he'd be like, go, be funny. And it was like, first of all, and then I realized that I cannot do comedy for white people because they're so boring. And so it was like, it was the best of times, you know, it was just crazy. And being like an intern for them and being their opener. And I felt like that was the best training. And Sherry was really generous, and Bone and I would do shows together. And we really blurred the color lines back then about comedy, because there was, you know, kind of the racial divide about gospel comedy, Christian comedy, whatever. Just comedy's comedy. And it was just so much fun. But within 6 months, I quit my day job. It was so fast, but I was faking it till I made it, because I don't give that advice at all. But I had all this acting training and all this Second City training and all this writing training. I always tell kids, it takes 100 shows before you even know if you're funny. And I don't know how hard it is for people to put that work in, but I'm like, you got to go to the open mic. You got to put the work in. You cannot fake the training for comedy. You can't just get a YouTube video. I don't know. I know you know Gilbert. I don't know if you know Carlos Oscar. Do you know who Carlos Oscar is? He's awesome. He's toured with Gilbert Escobar for a long time, who I'm a big fan of. You can't, he's like, just because you have a funny YouTube video, then they book you for a headlining spot at the club, and you can't do 45 minutes because you edited all your stuff. You're going to cut your teeth, Maurice, at the open mic, right? Like you're going to know, they're brutal. Sometimes I still do them just to, you know, do them. But I think there's no substitute for putting the work in.
No, there's no substitute for it. Open mics are brutal, and a lot of times you're performing in front of a bunch of comics.
Always.
That's really hard.
Drunk and they need therapy. And sometimes I go on stage lately. I haven't done an open mic in a while, but I was training for I had an agent showcase, and I just started doing open mics. And it was like 11:35 p.m. I was at the drag bar, open bar, you know, like nobody's there. And I was like, you guys, I'm a mom and I think you all need a hug and need to make better life choices because they were just so like angry and dirty. And, um,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know that if you have a good joke, it doesn't mean they're going to laugh at it at the open mic because they're kind of bitter. But I think it's just getting that practice. Or I told people, get practice anywhere you can. Go teach a Sunday school class. Go volunteer. Like anywhere you can get stage time is stage time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I do a lot of the open mics in DC. Have you ever done comedy in Washington, DC?
Yeah. Yeah. I did a club there. It's not there anymore. Eric Sellin used to have a club there, and my friend Kim, and we used to come do it. I love your town. I mean, it's a great town.
Yeah, I've often found the comedy in DC is more challenging than most other cities
Like, what's
because,
it like? What's the vibe?
well, it's very diverse. Washington DC is very diverse. I mean, you can walk into a room and everyone is elitist and political, and then you can go into another room and people are kind of ghetto and it's just down to earth. And then you run into oh my gosh, it's just so many it's a dichotomy of different things, and
So
it's a land
you
of
brought up something, Maurice, I want to talk to you about. I want to ask
okay.
you because with everything that's going on in our political culture and our divided country, it's affecting comedians. And so I haven't told this story publicly, but I want to get your opinion on it. So I
Okay.
just did, and I'm very clean. I'm like G. Okay, I'm not even controversial at all. I don't do like racial jokes. I mean, well, my kids are half Asian, and I say they're smarter than me. But so I just did a live stream and it went really well. And I was feeling so good about myself. And I think a couple thousand people watched it. And I
Wow.
have this joke about my 9-year-old daughter, how when I picked her up from school for COVID, they were like, she ate her earthquake kit. And I was like, that is so ghetto. Like you ate the canned tuna without a kit, it was like, whatever. And it was kind of throwaway line. Uh, she sends me an email and she goes, I thought you were very funny, but please don't use the word ghetto. It offends the Black community.
Wow.
And I was so like upset. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not how I meant it. I started calling up my friends that are African American. I'm like, can I not say the word ghetto? And she's like, first of all, we don't own the word ghetto. Like you could be ghetto and white, but I'm so nervous now to perform because I don't want to offend anybody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if comedians start worrying about offending, Dave Chappelle's never gonna get a show again. You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness, yes,
But
100%.
I mean, has that crossed your mind about how this is going to affect our livelihood? People are so hypersensitive. It's not just Black people; it's everybody.
Well, I totally agree with you. It makes it a lot more difficult. I've learned how to navigate through it by just attacking it and just praying that I will come out okay. And most of the time I do. I have had a couple of incidents where people got offended. Carrie, I did one show, I kid you not. I told a story about an incident that my wife experienced on the highway, and it involved a guy with a fishnet shirt, right? Now, so I told the story. I forget the joke. It was just a throwaway joke, but I used it for that moment. And so when I told the joke, it was funny, but the booker, the lady that booked me, she's not a booker, she booked me. She came up to the stage in the middle of the show
Shut up!
and she pulled me to the side. I've got the microphone in my hand, literally, Carrie, and she pulls me to the side. She leans forward and says, "Can you apologize? You just offended my nephew. He's gay." Do you
Right?
believe that?
That's like me saying my 9-year-old is ghetto for eating her earthquake kit. Like it's like if
Carrie,
you're gonna grab that for you, that's your problem. Because I just feel like that wasn't that's never the intention, right? So they just
no.
go so far. I did have one years ago. It was kind of funny. I said I went on eHarmony and they sent my money back because according to my quiz, I'm bipolar. And then the lady, and I told they do it all the time, and she goes, "Well, we had the bipolar support group in the audience that night," and I was like, "Well, they probably thought it was funny. But if we can't laugh, I mean, if we can't, if we, there's so many things that it's like, oh yeah, this story is hilarious. It happened to me, and I live in LA, so it's very, very ethnically diverse. I mean, it just is like there's LA's probably in a good way like that. You know, my kids, their school is very, very mixed. It's actually more African American than it is, and it's not because I did it on purpose. Can you tell that I secretly am like a strong Black woman? Because like my whole church is Black. I'm the only white family in my church, and so my kids wanted the dreadlocks in kindergarten. So, but I mean, I joke around with my pastor and I always tell him like stories about, you know, being the affirmative action person. I can joke at my church. But if I do that outside of that circle, people just, you know, because of the racial situations now, it's not, I just won't do it. I just won't talk about it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a bummer because I think comedy through the years, it's our job to tackle things. I mean, look at Richard Pryor, look at Eddie Murphy, look at Dave Chappelle. He's doing it now, but I don't see any Caucasian. You might still be able to get away with stuff, but you know, not that I have a lot of racial jokes or anything, but I just want the next 2 years is going to be really interesting to see what happens. Not to get off on a tangent. I just want to get your opinion.
Oh, no. I think that's a relevant question. I think that's a legitimate concern as a comic because Jerry Seinfeld says that he will not perform at a university again because of this political correctness stuff. You know, everybody's so offended about this, and you got all these different groups with agendas, and you're supposedly stepping on their toes. You don't even know you're stepping on their toes.
I know. I'm like, I'm just going to keep talking about my kids because apparently that's safe, you know. So, I mean, we'll get through it, but I think the world needs comedy. I think we're going to be working a lot. I'm really hopeful about that. People are trying some unique things. They're trying like drive-in shows. Some people are trying outdoor. I got a call about doing an outdoor. These are usually comedy nightmares. I mean, they are because outdoor sucks, but I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll just give it a try, you know.
Well, it's better than not doing any comedy at all. And I would agree with you. At least it's something, you know. But now it's
that's how I feel. I'm like, pick me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope we can. You know, maybe by 2021 we'll be back. You know, I don't know. I mean, does it?
Oh God, I hope so. Jeez.
I don't know if it takes removing the current, you know, leader of the free world right now and replacing him. That will change everything. I don't know, but
I don't know. I feel like and it's like it's one day at a time. It's one day at a time.
It's one day at a time. Being a Christian comedian, and you've been in a lot of secular environments. Have you ever had to deal with hecklers?
Yeah, but not a lot. I mean, even in the clubs, my act does not lend itself to hecklers. I'm not real dirty and I'm not real like sexual and stuff. So my act when I was single and I was doing stuff when I started in my late 20s and Bone will tell you funny stories. Bone was like my mentor. He was like my big brother. And he'd be like, "You're not wearing that." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're not wearing that. That t-shirt's too tight. You can't wear that." I'm like, "Shut up." And he's like, "You got to button that up more." And he's like, "You got to trust me. You cannot go on stage and be sexy. You cannot go on stage. The women are going to hate you." And he's right. He's like, "You got to win over the women. The women got to like you. There's not a lot of like hot, sexy comic girls. I mean, really." So he would teach me things, but we have funny backstage stories where he's helping me, like, he's like, "Button that up one more button," you know, and stuff like that. But hecklers for me, no, it has not been a big problem. I think they're more inclined to heckle guys, or they're more inclined to heckle like some dirty joke. You know what I mean? Have you gotten a lot of hecklers?
What's that?
Have you dealt with it a lot?
I've dealt with hecklers attempting to interrupt my set, but I found that most people are trying to help. They're just excited, and they just want
to. Absolutely.
You know,
and I think those are the ones that you go, "Oh, thank you so much, ma'am," and now we're moving on. Like, you know, you have those, and I've got like crazy stories about that, or you know, the comedy nightmares, the hell gigs where I'm doing grandma's 50th anniversary party and I'm doing comedy and the buffet is like in front of my stage. You know what I mean? And people are like walking up, or grandma didn't know they were bringing a comedian and she's pissed. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that where you're,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done, you know, I'm 14 years in, so I've got every story where I've done like the tractor pull behind me in the state fair and
Oh, wow.
you know,
Oh,
all
wow.
that kind of stuff where you're just paying your dues, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you're paying your dues. That sounds like a tough gig doing a state fair because you're outside and there's so many things going on. It's just
I was really lucky. My husband at the time, Ron McGee, he's a comic and we toured together. We weren't like a duo act, but we did comedy together. But you know, the joke would be he would open and he was supposed to do 20 and he goes on for like 8 minutes. He's like, and now your headliner, Carrie Pomeroli, like at the state fair, because he's like, they suck. But I always had somebody to laugh with. I think comedy can get really lonely when you're traveling by yourself.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because especially
Yeah.
if you're not doing clubs, the more successful you are, the more alone you are because they're just booking you. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So it can get a little bit lonely to not have somebody to laugh about it with or recap the situation.
You mentioned something about using the word ghetto, for example,
Yeah.
and it was taken the wrong way. You didn't mean it. What you weren't even thinking anything negative. You just made an expression. But um, what in light of what's happening in the world right now, you know, with the racial and excuse me, the
Right.
social climate being so hot right now, based on the
Yeah.
George Floyd
Yeah.
situation and so forth, and you know, I think now we're at a point where we can, I think, begin to start having open and honest conversations. But based on what you're seeing right now, do you see maybe positive, effective change coming as a result of the pushback
I
that
hope I
you know?
hope so. I have really good friends of all different races and we have all really good conversations. But I think it comes from people asking questions, Maurice. Like I called up my friend Delania. She's an African American. She's a doctorate, a PhD. And I just see
Okay.
her as a very eloquent woman. And I asked her, I said, I had a really good talk about it. I go, are you experiencing racism in LA like right now? Are you
Hmm.
experiencing it? And I want to hear about it. And she told me some stories about a couple things that had happened to her. And she said, you know, I really appreciate you wanting to know because, you know, I want to know. I want to know what's going on. I want to be informed. I want to be aware. I think a lot of what I'm seeing too is nervousness, you know what I mean, from a lot of the Caucasian community, and they want to go like 50 times over to they're like, I just want to prove to you that I'm not racist. I just want to prove to you. No, because I've always been in multicultural circles. It never
Yeah.
was something to prove. But I see a lot, I see a lot of like, let's go so far onto the other side. I hope I hope that doesn't matter. It's only going to matter is if the people that have a problem change. You know what I mean? The ones that are
Right.
going so far to the other side and making sure we put these signs in our windows and the moms club is all about white privilege and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it only matters is if you had a problem before and now you're better. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I think that the hashtag Me Too movement drastically changed things for women. I think men are on flipping high alert. And I think that this prayerfully will change things for at least, we hope, right? We hope for the people going. Like I heard a story, and I think it was a local story about a woman, African American woman. Her music was blasting, and she was driving down the beach, and a cop pulled her over. This was like before all this happened, but not that long ago. And he pulled her over, and he gets out of the car, and somebody else gets out of the and starts videotaping, right?
Okay.
And the cop walked away. Like he's like, so maybe he was like, I don't want to be taped. And you know, like maybe he wasn't pulling her over for a legit reason. So I guess that's a long answer, but I think, don't you think it's just us having intelligent conversations with everybody? You know what I mean? And then from a Christian perspective, I think the enemy just wants this country to be divided. It's like, you know, divide and conquer. It's like we're divided politically, now we're divided racially, we're divided. And the only thing that can truly fix that is a move of God. It's bigger than our human abilities.
Well, my son, I have a 21-year-old son, and his mother is Brazilian, so he's mixed. And so he's dating a white girl, and they went down on a trip to Daytona a couple of weeks ago. And when he was down there, I gave him a call. I said, "Listen, don't stop in Georgia and South Carolina on the way back, because I heard some stuff that was going on in light of
Crazy.
everything that's happening in the world right now." So anyway, and my son has a diverse crowd of friends, Asian friends, Latino friends, black, white, it's all the whole nine. And so one of his friends told him, he said, "I don't think your dad should be saying things like that to you. He should let you, make decisions for yourself based on your color." And my son was like, "I don't think you understand. My dad's black and I'm black." So
Yeah.
he needs to say things like that
Don't
to
you
help me
love
out. And
millennials? Millennials know everything, don't they? They just know. They know everything. But no,
supposedly,
I mean,
yes.
it's like my friend's white, her husband's black, her son is mixed, and he moved to LA. And she said that he got pulled over like 3 times for like, they moved to a small town in like a suburb. And he
Yeah,
finally went into the police, like had to go in. I couldn't believe this. And his dad was like, "Dude, just go into the police station and be like, my name's so and so. I just moved here. I just want you to know." I'm like, "He had to do that?" She's like, "Yeah, he had to do that." But maybe it was a smart move. But maybe we're changing. I don't know. I mean, I hope that we can bring laughter, because when you have all this crap all the time, and somebody just wants to make a stupid joke about their wife or their kids. I mean, look at all the comedy specials on Netflix. Like, it's blowing up. Like, there's a lot of comedy.
yeah.
So I just say we got to keep our chops sharp, keep doing those open mics, be ready to go when it's your time. Be ready to go, and
Yeah.
this is a gift that we have to give the world.
Yeah, and I made the decision, Carrie. I'm just going to start doing the Zoom stuff now. I tried to resist it for as long as I could, but I don't think anything's going to change. Like you said, we have to keep the creative juices going. We have to stay on it, keep performing, keep doing your stuff, keep writing, keep building, your routines. So yeah, I'm all in now, Carrie. It's like, okay, let's go do it. And again, when you're doing shows and you can't see anybody, that's really difficult. But that means though
I cheat. Like, I cheat. I'll have a little note at I have a little notepad, and I'll be like, "Tell the story about that." You know what I mean? And I'll go, it's like story time. It's like I took Judy Carter's comedy class. I love her. She wrote the comedy Bible, and my first joke was like, what's funny about this, or what's hard about this. But I found myself going back to those, like, what's crazy about homeschooling, and then you just riff and riff and riff and riff. Um, and I know when I go back in August, because it's been such a long break, I may have to have like a little, I don't know, maybe I'll have a little cheat sheet on my microphone or something. I have so much in my head. People are like, "How do you remember it?" I'm like, I have hours and hours in my head. Um, and do you use notes when you perform?
Oh no, I actually go up there, even open mics. I try to train myself at open mics never to take notes. Just go up there and do my thing.
Yeah, because it's kind of it's a crutch, because if you think that you have to refer to your notes, and comedy is funny. Like, I've had shows where I'm not feeling well. I've done shows, um, probably on pain meds before. It's like great, and you can tell, like, people that know me, have seen my act a lot of times. Friends will be like, when you did that long pause and you're like, and it's like your head's going, "What's my next?" I have nothing in my brain right now. I don't have one single thing in my brain.
Yeah,
And I'm just like
yeah.
looking at the lady in the front row going, but it's all there. It's all there.
Oh, it's all there, Carrie. And when that happens to me, I might do that, and then I'll go. All right, let me just go to my next joke that I had, because I can't remember. That's happened a
Yeah.
few times, but I don't refer to notes. I would just go up there, and when I'm up there, it's amazing, because 5 seconds before I go on stage, I say to myself sometimes, I go, I have no idea how I'm going to remember all of this stuff, right? And then I get up there, and invariably I remember everything. And when I
And
look at
what do
the
you like?
video,
What do you talk about in your act?
oh, I talk about my family. I talk about, kids that think they're thugs and they from good homes. So I like to make jokes
That's a
about
great
that.
premise.
Oh
Do you talk
yeah,
about being married to a Brazilian?
what's that?
You talk about being married to a Brazilian?
Oh yes,
That's
absolutely.
a
You know, I
hot.
talk
That'd be
about
hilarious.
it's very funny. You know how, especially dating my wife. You know, at the time, you know, having a whole, she didn't even know anything about the fact that American men are obsessed with football. She had
Oh
no
yeah,
idea how sickly obsessed American men are about football and sports.
right.
That was a real difficult
That's
thing for her to
hilarious.
get her head around. But yeah, so I make jokes about that, you know, and how it was just funny that, you know, I told her one time, I said, you know, babe, because she loves nature. She loves to go outside and take photographs, and she's a very outdoorsy person, you know, a special person, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I started thinking to myself, Carrie, I'm going, now she's normal. I'm sick.
No, you just have a comedian's brain. We just don't think normal. We just, and if I would sit in the back of a room with Ron, still to this day, my ex-husband, I was like, don't put me in the back of the church with me and him and somebody's giving a sermon. We can't, we're like two little kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, we can't focus and he's elbowing me and I'm like, just shut up. Just like, but, so being married to a comedian for 12 years and we're still like very close, he's around all the time. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like, we laughed our way through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we just we're always making jokes about. As a matter of fact, my wife was telling me the other day, we got to stop making. I've turned her into a comedian. Actually, she's naturally funny, and I get a lot of stuff. She just says funny things all the time. But so yeah, but you're right though, Carrie. You gotta just learn how to laugh things off, and I think we just kind of do it naturally. We can't help it. It's just kind of how we're wired to see the funny part of just about everything. But and speaking
So
of
let me
that,
ask you, Maurice, do you do clubs and have you ever done any faith-based shows?
yes, absolutely. I've done clubs. I've done a lot of clubs, and I've done a lot of faith based shows. And believe it or not, Carrie, I'm a clean comic, but I've gotten into more trouble in faith based atmospheres than a regular comedy club because of this PC subject matter type thing. You know, it's like
I couldn't tell you that. I should teach a class on it. I should teach a class on what you can say in a church. And I will tell you, back to the racial conversation,
yeah,
the Caucasian churches are way more uptight, like just 1,000 times more uptight than what you could get away with in saying a mixed crowd. Just a
is that
thousand times.
right? Okay, that's interesting. That's because I've done white clubs and atmospheres in the secular world, but I've never done a white church. I've
I
only
mean,
done
well,
African
you could
American church.
probably, okay, so white church people are super, they want to be PC. So black comic comes on stage, so they're nervous. So Michael Jr., do you know who Michael Jr. is?
Yes.
So he automatically does some kind of racial joke. He's like, it's good I'm not the only black speaker on the stage. And then he grabs the mic stand. But like he like has to put them at ease. But they're just nervous that they're gonna laugh at the wrong thing. But they'll
Yeah.
probably laugh more at you and let you get away with more. But there's something about being like a Caucasian comic with a Caucasian audience, and they're like, oh my God. Like I married a Korean guy. I married Ron. He's half Korean and half Irish. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, it's great. I can drive any way I want. And like that joke kills. I don't do it any much anymore. I used to do it. Or I'm like, oh, the dry cleaning discounts are amazing. Well, if you
Yeah.
tell that in like a Caucasian, like they're like, and then my favorite thing is like a mixed audience because they're just like looser. Do you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
just, but it's funny. So you say that in a church. So you've done a African American church and felt like they were nervous or they were a little like not accepting PC.
Well, African American churches, you have to be very careful because there's a political correctness that's there. It's
Really?
not.
I've never seen that. Like, tell me a joke that you've gotten in trouble for.
Well, I'll tell you a joke, Carrie. I actually got in trouble for saying it, and I deserve to get in trouble. I took a real chance on something that a joke I tell in clubs that always works. I was doing a joke about preachers, right? And it
Yeah.
was at a spoken word event. So it
Yeah.
wasn't church, but it was
But yeah, I got you. Yeah.
You know how that works. So, Carrie, they're loving me. Oh my God, the flash bulbs are going off. I'm just
Right.
chilling, right? And I had this joke that I wanted to tell that was a little edgy. And so my oldest son, at the times before when I say where I was talking to my family, it's just bouncing jokes and
Right.
off of them. And my oldest son was like, Dad, I wouldn't tell that one. Right.
Now I want to hear it. You can tell me off camera.
Carrie,
I'm a good judge. Like, you can probably tell me a joke right now and I can be like, yes, no. I mean, I've been doing it for so long. But see, edgy's like subjective. What's edgy to you may not be edgy to me, which may not be edgy to somebody else. You can't make fun of somebody else that you don't have I can't make fun of anyone else really but me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't be like, what's so annoying about preachers, I guess, because I'm not a preacher. So maybe that was part of the problem, because it seems that you're directing it at another group. You know what I mean?
well, this is what happened, Carrie. So I went into the joke and I said, I don't understand. It was really edgy, but I thought they were mature enough to kind of get the point, So I took a chance. We as comedians, we just love to push the envelope. I can't help it. I just have this
I've
thing in
done
me
it
where
a million times. I've done it.
I just can't help myself. So I went.
But were you making fun of pastors?
Well, I was. They loved that. They had no problem with me making fun of it. They loved it, and I said, "Oh wow, I've got them in the palm of my hand right now. If they don't like the joke, they'll forgive me." This is what I'm thinking, and I rationalized that to myself, right? They'll forgive me. They love me, right? So I go, it's crazy. The N word is used all the time by young people nowadays. I tell you, I don't understand it. And I said, you know what? But the thing is, the NFL, they made it a penalty to use it on the football field, which I think is crazy. That's like penalizing a white guy for saying to another white guy, dude, right? And so that was okay. I'm okay. Now, so far, so good. I said, can you imagine the referee on the football field? We have an infraction on number 21 for calling another player dude. 15 yards. Confederate flag.
That's funny.
That joke works really well in the clubs, but it fell flat in that environment.
You know why? I think just because you said the word Confederate flag, they freaked out. There's like trigger words. Like, I thought you were going to say the N word. I mean, like, I was like, you know better than that. But I don't think that's edgy at all.
Well, Carrie, let me full
But then you know what? You live
Yeah.
and learn. It's like you live and learn. Like now I'm not gonna say those, I'm not gonna say those words, or you know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's certain jokes. I'm trying to think if there's certain jokes that I won't do in a church that I would do in a club. I can't think right now. I've got stories. I don't know. I kind of feel out my audience once I get on stage. And if I see what they're laughing at, I'm like, oh, I know I can take, and it's fun. I love to push the envelope. I mean, that's the whole fun of comedy. But there's, or having a really, really uptight audience and just dig, until that you get them like laughing. It kind of keeps it fresh, right? Without being offensive. I mean, we're never going to be offensive. That's never going to be you. It's never going to be me. And the ones that are offensive ruin it for the rest of us, because then the church is scared to have comedy ever again.
Well, yes. Well, we've had a lot of guys bludgeon opportunities for comedy in the future. Some guys simply don't get it. But honestly, Carrie, I got full transparency. I told the joke. But when I was telling the joke, I was describing how a young African American male greets another young African American male.
Use the N word,
and I did.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
there's your big winner right there.
Yeah, and well, to get back to what you said, Carrie, you live and learn. I just described it. But my thing is, and of course, I'll never do that again. But my thing was, it wasn't like a reckless usage of it, in my
No,
opinion.
I know, but there's just triggers, Maurice. Like there's just
Yeah,
triggers in the church world. I've had some of the funniest things ever in my life happen to me that I can tell you off stage, stories that have racial components. I was telling my story, one story, something happened to me about a car accident. And I was telling my pastor, who's African American, and he's crying. He's like crying, and he's like, "It's too bad you can't tell that on stage, because you just can't, like, as in a club, sure, but in a church, they don't want to talk. They don't want to be pushed in a church. They just want it. When I say push, because I know just before I said push the envelope, but they just want that cookie cutter thing that, like, their 12-year-old son can be sitting there. So you just got to think of it when you're doing an act for a church. Like, make sure that there are kids in the audience and they're going to hear you and they're fine.
yeah, yeah. And you live and learn. And I've told that particular joke. It's got like a 95% success rate. I mean, it usually kills the whole room. I don't know what it is, but that it just, everybody laughs at that joke. But that was a horrible decision. I was fighting myself for the entire night, and I was the last comic, and that was the only joke I had in my whole arsenal that I thought might, because it was an all-black crowd. But anyway, Carrie, like you said, you live and learn in this business, and so I'll never do that again. There are just certain environments it's like, okay. But I think the faith-based world, I've learned to be very, very, very safe in those environments. So I really keep it as simple and as family related, because I have a lot of jokes about my family. And I love talking about, our lives and the things that we deal with technology and cell phones,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how me
yeah.
and my wife are total computer dummies. We don't have any idea what's going on. The kids know everything. We know nothing. We're, that I think the kids are responsible. The young people are they've got the button to get us out of this coronavirus situation.
For sure. For sure.
And they're not going to push the button as long as they don't have to go to school, Carrie.
True. True, Maurice. There's some
So,
millennial
just
out
talking
there.
about safe stuff is where I kind of keep it. When I go to the clubs, then I take chances on just different, because you know what, a lot of young people, they understand, there's some complicated things going on out here, and I think people are pretty much relieved, and they feel refreshed that, hey, someone's addressing some sticky stuff here. And it's really funny if you could just flip it over, because I found that blacks, whites, Latinos, whatever, no, I mean, in the secular world, certain jokes like that I may tell, nobody gets mad. Everybody kind of like sees the humor in it. But that being said, speaking of that, Carrie, what is your worst bombing experience on stage?
I'm trying to think. It's been a long. I mean, I think the open mics back in the day at the clubs in LA
Okay.
were brutal. I never had a show where I was like, the whole thing is horrible. Oh, I did a marriage conference many years ago, and let's just say the crowd was Upper Peninsula Michigan people. I'm from Michigan, and these
Yeah.
are people that pop culture not so much. And so I did this marriage conference, and Ron goes first, and he's like, I'm Korean Irish, and he always says a joke like, my mother drives this way, or like the wedding, they threw rice and potatoes or whatever. So he does Korean Irish, and you can tell this whole audience did not know what Korean was. Like, they were like, like, it was just, and I mean, I'm dying. And I remember thinking nothing pop culture is going to work, and nothing. It was just this, like, I didn't have the material for them. I don't know if there was inbreeding. Like, I don't, so, but we went to the bar. Like, I mean, it was bad. It was bad. It was like 10, 12. It was so bad. And we were doing like movie jokes and dirty dancing and blah, blah, blah. They were just very like sitting there praying. And so we go to the bar after the show. And the
Yeah.
bartender's like, yeah, man, did you hear about the comedy show? And we're like, yeah. He goes, oh, I heard it was so bad. I heard it was so edgy and so dirty. And we're like, he didn't know we were the comics. And we were just
Yeah.
like having our little cocktails. Like, oh, that was probably my worst. That was probably
Wow.
my worst experience. It was definitely a particular crowd, and we were new in comedy at the time, and I didn't know how to swing the crowd. I think I learned a lot of that from Bone and other comics that I've toured with. They know how to swing the crowd.
Yeah.
They've got something for that crowd. I used to tour with Carlos Oscar, and the crowd would be mediocre at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. He's killing. He's just killing. And I'm backstage going, I just want to quit. I have nothing. And so I have to have a really big bag of tricks, because if you're not liking my marriage jokes, I'm going to pull out the single jokes. If you don't like the single jokes, I'm going to pull out my shopping jokes. So now I have a really big bag to pull from.
Yeah.
And I know that there's something that I'm going to get you. Even when I've had to perform for 13-year-old girls, I didn't know that was my crowd. It was like, I thought it was a mom show, but it was like moms and daughters, but a lot of daughters that were like preteens. And I was working, man. I was just like, you know what's crazy about moms? And I flipped my whole act to talk about how crazy moms were instead of how crazy kids were. But I think that only comes with time. Back to my original point. It only comes with time. You can't fake the preparation.
No, you can't fake it. And as you mentioned, Bone Hampton, Bone and I had Bone on the show about 2 months ago, and Bone, he had some interesting things to say. Bone was like, you know what, Maurice, and getting back to the political correctness stuff, because Bone's about had enough of it. Bone said, listen, Maurice, I am so tired of my hat. Do you know what he means when he says, I'm tired of my hat? The typical African American church lady with the hat.
Yeah.
And he said he's so tired of the cookie cutter church. He said, from now on, he said, I'm going to have two different types of comedy, where I'm going to do a church for a grown church. I'm going to do comedy for grown church folk.
Well, and he and I had talked about it, like when we both were divorced around the same time, and
Yeah.
he was terrified to talk about being a single dad, and I was too for a little while. Like, they're gonna put a scarlet letter on me and think I'm, horrible. And then I was like, Bone, it's part of your life. Like, it does. And he was like, oh, you got to do a testimony about it. You got to talk about how the divorce wasn't your fault. I'm like,
yeah,
I just don't like, I'm a single mom. Where's my single mom's at? It doesn't matter. Like, that's your real life. So I remember talking to him about that and saying, you're going to be okay. They're not going to hate you because of your reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're not. They're not. But I'll tell you more about the joke I told you off when we get off, because it's really funny. It's really funny. It kills Norman. Anyway, Carrie, so this has been a great combo. I didn't get a chance really to ask you everything I wanted to ask, but this has been a great conversation and very informative. And I've learned just learning from you. Listening to you has been a great learning opportunity.
Me too. Thank you for having me. And I think it's a great thing that you're doing. And I think conversations with comics they're really interesting, because there's a lot more to a comedian than their jokes. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of backstory for all these people that we're gluttons for punishment to go up there and do what we do. So I'm sure it's I've checked out a little bit of a couple of your episode with Gilbert and a couple of that. And I think it's a great thing. So I hope you keep doing it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I love talking to comics. I can talk forever about comedy.
Well, I can send you all my dysfunctional comic friends if you want to interview.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking to Carrie Pomerali. I appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. We have a lot of folks coming in and out, but thanks for hanging with us. Been a great combo with Carrie. Hopefully we can talk with her again in the near future.
I love that. Thank you.
But Carrie, in the meantime, stay safe, and may the peace of Christ be with you.
Amen, brother.
Amen. All right. Carrie Pomerali, everybody. Maurice Brown Comedy Hour. We'll see you at 6 o'clock with Cornbread the Comic. We'll see you then.